Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are going to dissect the brand new Lexus UX. Now this is a brand new offering from Lexus, and it comes to sort of replace the Lexus CT in the range. That's because the CT used to be the smallest car you could buy with a Lexus badge. Well, that's no longer the case. That role is now going to the UX. And since we are living in this crossover hype and SUV hype all around the world, Lexus decided to make its cheapest and smallest car in the range a crossover. It is a very good choice if you ask me, because people will be clamoring to buy cars with this shape and a higher ground clearance. So here we are looking at the UX, which was first introduced in 2018, late 2018, and it went into production in 2018, but sales actually kicked off in 2019. And depending on where you live, you can get access to a number of versions. There is a internal combustion engine alone version, so you only have an internal combustion engine under the hood. That's the UX200. You have the hybrid, which is the one we have over here. It's called the UX250h. Or you can get the UX300, which is an electric car. It's a purely electric vehicle. Now we're going to focus on the hybrid because I think right now this is the best choice you can get in the range. But before we get to the technical details, let's talk about the design a little bit. Now, as you can tell, this is a typical Lexus. And by that I mean that you have the spindle grille up front that dominates the front end and makes this car feel and look like a Lexus. There are very sharp lines all over the front fascia, and we have sharp lines even included in the headlights. The headlights actually look pretty good. And you have the traditional Lexus LED daytime running lights over here embedded in them. And if you pay enough, you can actually get LED matrix functions on these headlamps, if you can afford them, of course, but they do not come as standard. And if you do, you have this cluster of LEDs over here that look really well and they work really well outside the city limits. The whole thing looks really aggressive, and looking at the car from the sides, you will notice the plastic cladding around the wheel arches and on the bottom of the car, because this is a crossover after all. Furthermore, I like the fact that when you open the doors, you notice that they cover the door sills, so you won't ruin your trousers whenever you get in or out of the car. Also, you can get 17-inch or 18-inch wheels on this car. We have the 18-inch wheels over here, and I think they have a very good mix of comfort and good looks for the UX. Moving around the back, you will also notice these sharp edges everywhere. The taillights have a very 3D shape, and I think they were created this way in order to make the car as aerodynamic as possible. And I will also mention the fact that you have a light bar connecting the two rear taillights, and that looks really well. If you open the trunk, you will notice that the space is rather limited, depending on the configuration you go for, because you can have the UX with all-wheel drive. You can get less room than in a front-wheel drive car. That's because the geometry of the rear axle changes. You have an added electric motor on the back, and you have independent suspension over there if you go for the all-wheel drive version. So if you do that, you have 283 liters of space. If you don't, if you get the front-wheel drive car, you have 320 liters of space available in the trunk. When you get inside the Lexus UX, you instantly recognize a lot of familiar things, especially if you've ever been in a Lexus. Everything is familiar. We have the same steering wheel as in other Lexus models, including the RX, the big brother. We have the same instrument cluster as on the ES version. We have the same gear shift lever and the same trackpad over here for the infotainment system. The infotainment system is the same as in every other Lexus today. It's rather hard to use only with this trackpad, but luckily you get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The one issue you will notice though is the fact that this screen doesn't have a touch sensitive surface, so it's not a touch screen. Basically you'll have to control every function on the screen using this trackpad. Yes, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay will help a lot in this regard, and I like the fact that this armrest, which opens both ways, has room for your data cable, because the connection to Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is done via a cable. It's not wireless, and the connector is inside the center armrest. But Lexus thought of everything, and they left a space over here for your cable so that it doesn't get sectioned off. Another thing I would like to praise about this car is the fact that you have all the multimedia controls over here in the armrest. And you can control basically everything you could possibly need. And let's be honest, most of the time we only use the infotainment system to change the channel or maybe change the song, turn up the volume, turn it down and so on. And you have all these controls over here. You basically feel like a DJ when you're driving this car, and it works really well. And I also have to praise the audio system in this car. It's not the Mark Levinson system, it's the Panasonic one, the intermediate version if you will, with 8 speakers and the subwoofer, but it sounds incredibly well. I love it. It sounds really, really well, and I don't really think you need the Mark Levinson setup. I know it's going to be great, but I think this is enough for most people. It sounds brilliant. Now, we also have a new take on the interior design in the UX. Basically, I'm referring to the HVAC controls, which have this setup with piano style tabs over here, and it's really easy to use, and I like the way these buttons feel to the touch. So yeah, we have 2 cup holders over here, a wireless charging port, and 12-volt socket over here, which is overly complicated, and everything looks and feels nice to the touch. Even the plastic surfaces are done in soft touch plastic, and I love the way they feel. So yeah, you don't have the leather wrapped door panel over here like you would in an ES, but even the plastic they used is of good quality, and it feels really like it was really well put together. So yeah, even the seats are really nice on this version. We have leather seats with heating and a perforated leather pattern over here. They feel great, and they really wrap around you whenever you drive this car. And I also have to say that I have plenty of room in here, no issues whatsoever. That's not something I could say about all of this car's rivals. But let's see how things go down in the back. Yeah, as I expected, there isn't a lot of space in the back of this car. The main issue is the legroom, to my surprise, because I seem to have close to enough headroom in the back. Now I'm 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds, and the driver's seat is adjusted in my comfortable driving position. So this would be the situation for 2 adults of my size. So that said, it's not the perfect car for 4 adults of my size. But if you are talking about smaller people, then they should be good in here in the back of the UX. I like the fact that the quality of the materials used in the back is the same as up front, and that's about it. We also get 2 USB chargers over here, our own climate zone, and yeah, that's it. When it comes to the driving part of the Lexus UX, well, it's going to feel very familiar to other Toyota or Lexus products. Especially in this configuration, because what we have here is the hybrid version, the UX250h. In the range, you also have a normal internal combustion only powered version with the same 2-liter engine under the hood and the CVT gearbox. And we also get a completely electric version, the UX300e. But I'm testing the hybrid, so I'm going to talk about the hybrid over here. What we have under the hood is the same setup that you will find in the Toyota CHR. So it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder petrol engine using an Atkinson cycle, developing up to 146 horsepower, hooked up to an electric motor that's delivering about 100 horsepower. And in total, the car can rely on up to 178 horsepower. Now, if you get the all-wheel drive version, which is the one we have, you also get a small electric motor on the rear axle. But that motor will only kick in when the car feels the need for more grip. But other than that, you will rely on the front axle and the front engine alone. So even though that engine has about 5 horsepower, that motor on the rear axle has 5 horsepower. The total power output you can rely on in this car is still 178 horsepower. And once you drive it, it feels like a regular CVT gearbox. You have an eCVT unit over here. So what's gonna happen is whenever you press on the gas pedal harder than usual, you will hear the internal combustion engine revving up, and then the car starts to accelerate. So there's a discrepancy in between the loud noise you hear from under the hood and how fast the car accelerates. But that's just typical CVT stuff, so nothing to write home about over here. But the car feels lively enough. I mean, when you press on the gas pedal, the torque is instant thanks to the electric motors, so you will accelerate rather fast. The car will do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 8.5 seconds if it's a front-wheel drive car, or and 8.7 seconds on an all-wheel drive version because of the added weight, and the power isn't enough to compensate for the added weight. So it will feel lively enough. The top speed is 177 kilometers an hour, enough for most people. But the main advantage this car has over its rivals is the fuel consumption around town. So I saw an average fuel consumption of around 6.5 to 7 liters per 100 kilometers covered. Once you go on the highway though, it will go up to about 8 liters per 100 kilometers covered. So you might want to think about the car you are getting depending on what kind of usage scenario you will have. So if you're buying this car for longer trips on the regular, maybe you should go for a diesel car. But if you're buying this car for inner city usage, I think it's a very good choice because it will be very refined and very fuel efficient around town. I'm also surprised at how nimble the car feels and how comfortable it feels. It's important to note that this car comes with 2 suspension setups. You can have it with a fixed ratio for the dampers, or you can have it with adaptive suspension. We have the fixed ratio dampers over here, and they feel pretty good for any given situation. I imagine on the adaptive damper setup, you will have a stiffer suspension in sport mode, but I cannot really confirm it because I didn't get to drive that version yet. But even so, in this configuration, the car feels very comfortable, very nice in and over various potholes, if you will. It soaks up the bumps really nice, and it's quiet too. So well done, Lexus. Also, the car is very quiet at higher speeds too. If you go over 110 kilometers an hour, there will be some road noise coming in through the windscreen and the A-pillars over here, but it's not that bad overall. And as I was saying, this car would probably be mostly recommended for inner city usage. And the visibility is rather good. You have a blind spot at the C pillar in the back, but overall the visibility is rather nice. Now the last thing I want to point out is the sound system, which I found very good, even though it's not the Mark Levinson version, because on this car you can also get a Mark Levinson setup, but this car doesn't have it. But even this intermediate version from Panasonic with 8 speakers does sound really, really good, and I absolutely love it. And I might dare say that you don't really have to go all the way up to the Mark Levinson system. This one will be good enough for most people. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed this car, but the competition is really stiff in this segment. And I'm talking about the BMW X1, the Mercedes-Benz GLA, and the Volvo XC40. These are the main rivals. Maybe the Jaguar E-Type as well. Maybe the Jaguar E-Pace as well. So you have a rather hard choice ahead of you. The pricing is rather high on the UX, but it does come as standard with a automatic hybrid setup. So you also get 6 years warranty and at up to 200,000 kilometers. And the batteries and the electric components are guaranteed for up to 10 years. So, you know, that should play a role in your decision as well. That said, I would like you guys to tell me which one of these cars you would get. If you would go for the Volvo, the BMW, the Mercedes, or the Lexus, you let me know in the comment section below. Oh, and there's also the Audi Q3 in this segment. If you enjoyed my review, please drop a like, a comment, and maybe subscribe to keep this channel alive. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.